Sanford and Son wasn't just a sitcom, it was a revolution wrapped in a junkyard. A show where the laughs came from places network television had never dared to go. But behind the trash talking and fake heart attacks, nothing was simple. The star walked off set in mid-season, scripts got rewritten in anger, and one joke that nearly ended the whole thing. These are 20 weird facts about Sanford and Son, and the bonus, a piece of junk that became worth more than gold. Grab your big one, Elizabeth. This ride gets messy fast. Number 20. The inspiration came from across the ocean.
Golf course attached. Is that a separate charge?
Yes, I'm afraid it is. But you can pay here, save spending the old pesetas.
Before Fred Sanford ever clutched his chest and called for Elizabeth, there was Albert Steptoe. The British sitcom Sanford and Son premiered in 1962, following a cranky rag and bone man and his long-suffering son trapped in poverty and mutual resentment. It was dark, it was gritty, and it was brilliant. American producer Norman Lear saw the potential immediately. He bought the rights and transformed it into something uniquely American. Gone were the bleak British streets. In came Watts, Los Angeles, a black neighborhood bursting with life, struggle, and unfiltered honesty. Lear didn't just translate the show, he rebuilt it from the ground up, keeping the father-son tension, but injecting it with soul, rhythm, and a comedic edge that felt both familiar and revolutionary. What started as a depressing British drama about class warfare became an American comedy about survival, pride, and family dysfunction. The bones were British, but the heart, that was pure Watts. And Number 19, Red Fox was already a legend before the show.
We'll settle the whole thing. We'll wrap the deal up. Very good. Okay, goodbye. Hey, Pop. Shh, I'm on the TV.
When Red Fox signed on to play Fred Sanford, he wasn't some unknown actor hoping for a break. He was already a comedy icon. For decades, Fox had dominated the Chitlin circuit, performing in black nightclubs across America, where his raunchy no-holds-barred style made him an underground sensation. He released party albums so explicit they were sold under the counter, records that couldn't be played on radio but sold millions anyway. Richard Pryor considered him a mentor. Eddie Murphy called him a trailblazer. But mainstream America had no idea who he was. Norman Lear changed that. He gave Fox a platform, a character, and a chance to bring his raw comedic genius to network television, softened just enough to get past the censors. Fox didn't need Sanford and Son to prove himself. He needed it to show white America what black audiences had known for years. He was one of the funniest men alive, and he wasn't softening for anyone. Number 18. The character was named. After Red's real brother, Fred G. Sanford wasn't just a character. He was a tribute. Red Fox's real name was John Elroy Sanford, and Fred was the name of his older brother who died young. The middle initial G stood for nothing. Fox added it as a joke, a wink to his own life, a way of carrying his brother's memory into every episode. It was deeply personal, hidden in plain sight. Audiences laughed at Fred Sanford's antics, his schemes, his stubborn refusal to change. But for Fox, the name meant something more. It was family. It was history. It was a man who never got his shot at fame, immortalized through comedy. Every time someone called out Fred Sanford, Fox wasn't just answering as a character. He was honoring a ghost. That kind of weight doesn't show up in the scripts, but it lived in every performance. Because comedy, real comedy, it's always personal. Number 17. The fake heart attacks became iconic by accident.
You went and did it. I might need that money tonight.
"I'm coming, Elizabeth" became one of the most famous catchphrases in television history. But it wasn't planned. The fake heart attacks, the clutching of the chest, the dramatic stumbles, they started as improvisation. Red Fox would throw them in during rehearsals to get laughs from the crew. And the writers loved it so much they started scripting it in. But the genius wasn't just the physical comedy. It was the name. Elizabeth was Fred Sanford's late wife, the love of his life, and every time he called out to her, it added a layer of tragedy beneath the humor. He wasn't just faking a heart attack, he was reaching for something he'd lost. Audiences laughed because it was absurd, but they felt it because it was real. That balance, comedy laced with grief, became the heartbeat of the show. And it happened because Red Fox understood something most sitcoms didn't. The funniest moments are often the saddest ones in disguise. Number 16. Demon Wilson almost wasn't cast as Lamont.
But it's an entirely different ball game now. Hello, darling.
Lamont. Sanford, the voice of reason trapped in a junkyard with a con artist father, almost went to someone else entirely. Producers auditioned dozens of actors, looking for the perfect straight man to balance Red Fox's chaos. Demon Wilson was working sporadically, picking up small roles here and there, nothing that stuck. When he auditioned, he didn't try to be funny. He played it real, tired, frustrated, a son who loved his father but was suffocated by him. That honesty landed him the role. But once filming started, tensions rose fast. Wilson was younger, more ambitious, and he clashed with Fox constantly. He wanted more screen time, better storylines, and respect. Fox wanted to run the show his way. Their arguments became legendary on set, shouting matches that sometimes delayed shooting for hours. But on camera, that tension worked. You could feel the friction, the love mixed with resentment, the push and pull of two men stuck together whether they liked it or not. Sometimes the best chemistry comes from conflict. And number 15, the junkyard set was filled with real junk.
2, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Most sitcoms built their sets from scratch, clean props arranged to look lived in, not Sanford and Son. The producers wanted authenticity, so they filled the junkyard with actual junk. Old washing machines, rusted car parts, broken furniture, discarded appliances, all real, all dirty, all exactly the kind of stuff you'd find in a Watts salvage yard. The set smelled. Actors complained about dust and grime. But it looked real because it was real, and that authenticity bled into the performances. You can't fake being surrounded by trash. You react to it. You move through it differently. It shaped how the actors carried themselves, how they interacted with the space, how the comedy felt grounded instead of polished. Norman Lear believed in realism, even in comedy. He didn't want a sitcom that looked like a stage. He wanted one that felt like life, messy and imperfect and absolutely alive. On number 14, Red Fox. Fought the network over. Every script.
Let me out of this prison! I want to go home! Hey, let me out of here!
Say, will you please hold it down?
Red Fox didn't just perform, he fought. Every script, every joke, every storyline, he scrutinized it all. If something didn't feel authentic to Black life, he'd demand rewrites. If a punchline felt lazy or played into stereotypes, he'd refuse to say it. The network hated it. They wanted a compliant star, someone who'd show up, hit their marks, and cash the check. But Fox wasn't interested in being easy. He knew this show was groundbreaking, one of the first sitcoms centered on a Black family that wasn't sanitized or softened for white comfort. He wasn't going to let it become a minstrel show. So he pushed back hard, sometimes too hard. Producers called him difficult. Writers dreaded his notes. But the show stayed honest because Fox refused to compromise. He understood something the network didn't. Comedy could be a mirror, and if that mirror was going to reflect Black life, it had to be the truth, even when the truth was uncomfortable. Number 13. The show tackled topics other sitcoms wouldn't touch.
It didn't have to be scatological to be funny. He thought so.
What about Damon Wilson? Where'd you find him?
Damon Wilson was...
While most 1970s sitcoms played it safe, Sanford and Son leaned into the hard stuff. Racism, poverty, police brutality, addiction, economic inequality, it was all there, wrapped in jokes but never hidden. One episode dealt with Fred Sanford being harassed by cops for no reason. Another explored Black pride and cultural identity during the height of the Black Power movement. These weren't very special episodes. They were just life, the reality of being Black in America, filtered through comedy because sometimes laughter is the only way to survive the pain. Norman Lear built his career on this approach, using sitcoms as Trojan horses for social commentary. But it only worked because the cast, especially Fox, committed fully. They didn't wink at the camera. They played it straight, letting the absurdity of the situation speak for themselves. And audiences responded because they recognized themselves in the struggle, in the laughter, in the refusal to be broken by a system designed to crush them. Number 12. Aunt Esther was supposed to be a one-time character. LaWanda Page walked onto the Sanford and Son set for a single episode and never left. Her character, Aunt Esther, Fred's Bible-thumping, sharp-tongued sister-in-law, was meant to appear once and disappear. But the chemistry between her and Red Fox was explosive. They traded insults like boxers throwing punches, each line sharper than the last, and audiences couldn't get enough. So the writers kept bringing her back, episode after episode, until she became a series regular. What made it even better? LaWanda Page and Red Fox knew each other in real life. They'd come up together on the Chitlin circuit, performing in the same clubs, cracking the same crowds. That history gave their on-screen battles an edge, a familiarity that felt lived in and authentic. When Aunt Esther called Fred an ugly heathen, you believed every word. The insults weren't scripted banter. They were two old friends roasting each other the way that only people who truly know each other can. Number 11. Red Fox walked off set and nearly killed. The show
can't get themselves together. They have a home there, and I want to do something about that so that they're not released to go into tab.
Mid-season, without warning, Red Fox didn't show up. No explanation, no negotiation, just gone. The reason? Money. Fox believed he was being underpaid, that the network was making millions off his name, while he scraped by on a fraction of what the show was worth. He wanted equity, respect, and a fair deal. The network refused, so Fox walked. Production ground to a halt. Writers scrambled to create episodes without Fred Sanford, leaning heavily on Lamont in the supporting cast. The fans were furious. The media speculated the show was finished. For weeks, it looked like Sanford and Son might collapse entirely. Then finally, a deal was reached. Fox returned, but the damage was done. The trust between him and the network never fully recovered. He'd proven his point, that the show couldn't exist without him, but he'd also made himself a target. Walking off set wasn't just a power move. It was a risk, one that could have ended everything. But Fox didn't care. He knew his worth, and he refused to settle for anything less. Number 10. The theme song was pure genius. Quincy Jones didn't mess around. When Norman Lear approached him to create the theme for Sanford and Son, Jones delivered something unforgettable. The street beater wasn't just catchy, it was funky, rhythmic, and dripping with soul. The bass line hit hard, the horns punched through, and within seconds, you knew exactly what kind of show you were watching. No lyrics, no explanation needed, just a pure groove. What made it even more remarkable was how it became a cultural touchstone beyond the show. The theme showed up in movies, commercials, samples, remixes. It outlived the series itself, becoming shorthand for cool, for street-smart swagger, for a certain kind of authenticity that couldn't be faked. Quincy Jones was already a legend when he composed it, but the street beater added another layer to his legacy. It proved that television music didn't have to be throwaway background noise. It could be art. And for 6 seasons, every time that theme kicked in, audiences knew they were about to witness something special. A junkyard in Watts transformed into the center of the comedy universe, all because of a bass line that refused to quit. Number 9. The show made the junkyard business look cool.
Period.
Before Sanford and Son, junkyards were punchlines, places where broken things went to die. But Fred Sanford turned salvage into an art form. He'd take trash and see treasure, finding value where everyone else saw garbage. And somehow, that philosophy became aspirational. The show didn't glamorize poverty, but it refused to be ashamed of it either. Fred ran his business with pride, hustle, and an unshakable belief that he was sitting on a gold mine even when he wasn't. That attitude resonated with audiences, especially in Black communities, where making something out of nothing wasn't just a gimmick, it was survival. After the show aired, junkyard owners reported increased business. People started seeing salvage yards differently, not as dumps, but as places of possibility. Some even credited the show with helping legitimize the recycling movement before recycling was mainstream. Fred Sanford didn't just sell junk, he sold a mindset. The idea that nothing is truly worthless if you know how to look at it right. And in a country built on throwing things away, that message hit harder than anyone expected. Number 8. Whitman Mayo's Grady Was Born. From a single episode.
See, I take a piece of bologna and wrap it around some cheese and onion and garlic and call it the look-away.
Grady Wilson showed up once and became family. Whitman Mayo played Fred's old friend with such warmth and bumbling charm that audiences fell in love immediately. He wasn't sharp like Fred or exasperated like Lamont. He was just a good-natured man, trying to help and usually making things worse. The writers saw the potential and kept bringing him back, episode after episode, until Grady became a fixture. Eventually, NBC gave him his own spin-off, Grady, which lasted 2 seasons before quietly fading away. But on Sanford and Son, Mayo's character worked perfectly because he provided something the show desperately needed: sweetness. Fred and Lamont spent most of their time bickering, scheming, and surviving. Grady reminded audiences that kindness still existed in the junkyard, even if it came wrapped in confusion. Mayo's performance was understated, never reaching for laughs but earning them naturally through timing and sincerity. In a show built on conflict and chaos, Grady was the calm, the friend who'd show up no matter what, even if he forgot why he came in the first place. Number 7. The show was filmed before a live studio audience.
See, I was in the kitchen fixing some spare ribs.
Now hold it. Hold it. It'll be necessary to get a detailed report of this.
Most sitcoms in the 1970s used laugh tracks, canned laughter piped in during editing, to tell audiences when to react. Sanford and Son didn't need it. Every episode was performed in front of a live studio audience, real people watching in a real time, laughing when things were funny and sitting silent when they weren't. That immediacy changed everything. The actors fed off the energy, timing their jokes to the rhythm of genuine reactions. If a line didn't land, they felt it instantly. If something killed, the laughter would roll through the soundstage like thunder. Red Fox thrived in that environment. He'd been performing live his entire career, reading crowds, adjusting on the fly, riding the wave of audience response. For him, a studio audience wasn't pressure, it was home. And that authenticity translated to the screen. You can hear it in the laughter, uneven, spontaneous, human. No 2 takes sounded the same because no 2 audiences reacted the same way. It kept the show alive, unpredictable and dangerous in the best possible way. Because when real people are watching, you can't fake it. Number 6. Della Reese. Almost replaced LaWanda Page.
Hey, Lamont, have you met my niece? Della Reese!
When LaWanda Page's health began to falter during the later seasons, producers panicked. Aunt Esther had become essential to the show's chemistry, and losing her would leave a massive hole. So they quietly began considering replacements, someone who could match Page's intensity and sharp comedic timing. Della Reese, already a star in her own right, was approached for the role. She was talented, charismatic, and could trade barbs with Red Fox without missing a beat. But before anything was finalized, LaWanda Page recovered and returned to the set. The replacement conversation disappeared, buried and mostly forgotten. Reese moved on to other projects, eventually finding massive success in Touched by an Angel years later. But for a brief moment, Sanford and Son almost looked very different. It's impossible to imagine anyone else as Aunt Esther. Paige brought something irreplaceable, a lived-in toughness mixed with genuine spiritual fire that felt real because it was. She wasn't acting self-righteous, she believed it, and that conviction made every insult she hurled at Fred land twice as hard. Della Reese might have been great, but LaWanda Page was perfect. Number 5. The show launched careers. Nobody expected
Mr. Postman Day! Well, welcome. Good, Mark.
Sanford and Son wasn't just a comedy. It was a launch pad. Writers, directors, and actors who passed through the show went on to shape television for decades. Producers like Bud Yorkin and writers like Saul Turteltaub used their experience on the series to create other groundbreaking shows. Directors honed their craft filming episodes in front of live audiences, learning how to balance comedy with social commentary without losing the laughs. Even guest stars benefited, using their Sanford and Son appearances as calling cards that opened bigger doors. But perhaps most importantly, the show proved that Black-centered sitcoms could dominate ratings and sustain long runs without compromise. It paved the way for Good Times, The Jeffersons, and What's Happening, shows that wouldn't have existed without Sanford and Son proving the audience was there, hungry for stories that reflected their lives. Norman Lear built an empire on this foundation, and Red Fox was the cornerstone. The junkyard wasn't just Fred Sanford's business. It was a breeding ground for the future of television, messy and chaotic and absolutely essential. The writer's room became a training ground for some of television's sharpest minds. They learned how to write dialogue that crackled with authenticity, jokes that didn't punch down but punch back at systems of oppression. They discovered that comedy could be a weapon, a tool for social change disguised as entertainment. And they took those lessons with them when they left, spreading the Sanford and Son philosophy across the television landscape like seeds in fertile ground. Even the technical crew benefited. Cinematographers learned how to light black skin properly, something Hollywood had failed at for decades. Sound engineers figured out how to capture the rhythm and cadence of black speech patterns without making them sound like caricatures. Set designers studied how to create spaces that felt lived in and real, not sanitized for white comfort. Every department learned something valuable, skills they'd carry into future projects. The show's influence extended beyond television into film, music, and culture at large. Comedians studied Red Fox's timing, his willingness to pause and let moments breathe. Musicians sampled the theme song, weaving the street beater into hip-hop tracks and jazz compositions. Fashion designers drew inspiration from the show's aesthetic, the working-class style that mixed practicality with pride. And perhaps most significantly, Sanford and Son proved that black stories didn't need white saviors or white approval to succeed. The show centered black life, black struggle, black joy, and it did so unapologetically. It didn't ask permission. It didn't soften edges. It simply existed, boldly and brilliantly, and in doing so, it changed what was possible. The careers it launched weren't just individual success stories. They were proof that the door Sanford and Son kicked open would stay open, that the revolution it started would continue long after the junkyard closed for business. Number 4. Red Fox's gambling addiction. Nearly destroyed him.
Funny under those circumstances, but all in all, it was great fun, great experience, and I'd like to do it again.
Did Bob ask you to go, or did you?
Off-screen, Red Fox was bleeding money. Despite earning a fortune from Sanford and Son, he had a gambling problem that swallowed everything. He'd blow thousands in Vegas, lose entire paychecks at card games, chase losses until there was nothing left. The IRS eventually came after him, claiming he owed millions in back taxes. They seized his assets, froze his accounts, and turned his financial life into a public nightmare. Friends tried to intervene, but Fox couldn't stop. The adrenaline, the risk, the belief that the next bet would fix everything, it consumed him. Even during the height of his television success, he was broke, living paycheck to paycheck while playing one of the most famous characters on television. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Fred Sanford spent every episode scheming to get rich, while Red Fox spent every night losing fortunes. It was tragedy disguised as comedy, a man who made millions laugh while drowning in debt. By the time Sanford and Son ended, Fox's finances were in ruins. a cautionary tale about fame, addiction, and the price of never knowing when to walk away. The gambling started innocently enough, or so Fox told himself. A few hands of poker with friends, some craps at a local casino, nothing serious. But slowly, imperceptibly, it became everything. He'd finish taping an episode and head straight to Vegas, still in costume sometimes. Fred Sanford's hat and suspenders replaced by expensive suits he'd bought on credit. He'd sit at tables for hours, sometimes days, ignoring phone calls, missing meetings, losing track of time and money in equal measure. His friends watched helplessly as the addiction consumed him. Demon Wilson later said he tried talking to Fox multiple times, but the older comedian would just laugh it off, make a joke, change the subject. LaWanda Page, who'd known him for decades, confronted him directly, telling him he was destroying himself. Fox would nod, agree, promise to quit, then be back at the tables the next weekend. The IRS didn't care about his problems. They just wanted their money. When they came after him, they came hard. They raided his home, taking furniture, artwork, and personal belongings. They seized the Sanford and Son truck, the very symbol of his success, and put it up for auction. Fox was humiliated, devastated, but still couldn't stop gambling. He'd borrow money from friends, promising to pay them back, then lose it all the same night. The saddest part wasn't the lost money. It was the lost potential. Red Fox could have been set for life, could have built an empire, could have secured his legacy. Instead, he spent his final years scrambling for work, taking any gig he could get, trying desperately to dig himself out of a hole that kept getting deeper. The man who taught America to laugh at poverty ended up living it for real, trapped in a cycle of his own making, unable to escape. Number 3. The final episode wasn't meant to be final. When Sanford and Son aired its last episode in 1977, nobody called it a finale. There was no farewell tour, no emotional goodbye, no carefully crafted send-off. The show just stopped. Red Fox had decided he was done, tired of fighting with producers, exhausted from the grind, ready to move on. So he walked away, and the network had no choice but to let the series end. But the conclusion felt incomplete, anticlimactic. A show that deserved a grand exit, but instead just faded to black. Fans were confused and frustrated, left without closure, without a proper goodbye to characters they'd loved for 6 seasons. Later, NBC attempted to revive the series with Sanford, a continuation starring Demon Wilson without Red Fox. It lasted 1 season before being canceled, proof that the junkyard couldn't survive without Fred. The original show's abrupt ending became part of its legend, a reminder that even the best things don't always get perfect conclusions. Sometimes they just end, messy and unresolved, exactly like real life. The circumstances surrounding the cancellation were complicated and bitter. Fox had been fighting with NBC for years over money, creative control, and respect. He felt undervalued, underpaid, and underappreciated, despite delivering ratings that kept the network profitable. The final straw came when contract negotiations broke down completely. Fox wanted an ownership stake in the show, arguing that his name, his face, and his talent had built the empire. NBC refused, offering more money but no equity. Fox walked, and he never looked back. The cast found out the show was ending through industry rumors, not official announcements. Demon Wilson was blindsided, having assumed they'd continue for at least another season. LaWanda Page was heartbroken, feeling like the family she'd built on set was being torn apart without warning. The crew packed up the junkyard set in silence, everyone aware they were dismantling something special, something that could never be rebuilt exactly the same way. When NBC tried to continue without Fox, launching Sanford with Demon Wilson in the lead and a revolving door of guest stars filling Fred's absence, it was doomed from the start. The chemistry was gone. The energy had evaporated. Audiences tuned in hoping for magic and found only echoes. Wilson did his best, delivering solid performances week after week, but he couldn't carry the weight alone. The show had always been about the father-son dynamic, the push and pull between Fred's schemes and Lamont's exasperation. Without that tension, it was just another sitcom, forgettable and flat. The abrupt ending haunted everyone involved. Years later, cast members would talk about it in interviews, still processing the loss, still wishing they had gotten one more season to say goodbye properly. Red Fox himself admitted regret, not for leaving, but for how it happened. He wished he'd fought harder to ensure the show ended on its own terms, not NBC's. But by then, it was too late. The junkyard was closed, the gates locked, and all that remained were memories and reruns playing endlessly on syndication. Number 2. The pickup truck became more famous than most actors.
They did a great job on that truck,
That's
too.
what he told them on.
Oh my gosh, so
yeah.
many memories.
Great stuff.
It wasn't just a prop. That battered red Ford F-Series pickup truck with Sanford and Son painted on the side became an icon. Audiences recognized it instantly, a symbol of Fred's hustle and his refusal to quit no matter how broken things got. The truck appeared in nearly every episode, rattling down streets, hauling junk, breaking down at the worst possible moments. It had character, personality, a presence that transcended being a vehicle. After the show ended, the truck disappeared for decades, lost to time, and was scrapped. Then, in the 2000s, it resurfaced. A private collector had preserved it, kept it in near original condition. A piece of television history rescued from the junkyard it once represented. Today, that truck is worth a fortune, valued higher than most classic cars because it's not just metal and rust. It's memory, nostalgia, a physical reminder of a show that changed comedy forever. Fred Sanford drove junk for a living, but somehow his junk became priceless. And that feels exactly right. The truck's journey after Sanford and Son ended reads like a Hollywood screenplay itself. When production wrapped, NBC sold off props and equipment in bulk auctions. The truck went to a California salvage dealer who had no idea what he'd purchased. It sat in his lot for years, weathering sun and rain, slowly deteriorating alongside actual junk cars. The paint faded, the engine seized, the tires rotted. By the mid-80s, it looked ready for the scrapyard, just another forgotten relic from television's past. But fate intervened in the form of a die-hard fan who recognized the truck while searching for parts. He negotiated a purchase price, barely more than scrap value, and hauled it home. Over the next decade, he meticulously restored it, tracking down original parts, matching the paint color exactly, even recreating the hand-painted Sanford and Son, lettering using photographs from episodes. It became his obsession, his mission to preserve this piece of cultural history. When word got out that the truck had been found and restored, offers started pouring in. Museums wanted to display it. Collectors wanted to own it. Car shows wanted to feature it. The truck appeared at classic car rallies, nostalgia conventions, and television history exhibitions, drawing crowds wherever it went. People who'd grown up watching the show lined up to take photographs, to touch it, to connect with something tangible from their childhoods. The truck's value skyrocketed, not because Ford F-Series pickups are rare, they're not, but because this particular truck represented something beyond transportation. It was the vehicle of Black entrepreneurship, of making do with what you have, of pride and hard work even when that work involved hauling other people's trash. It was Fred Sanford's chariot, his ship, his means of navigating a world that constantly tried to keep him down. Today, the truck is insured for more than most people's houses, a six-figure artifact that occasionally appears at special events, always surrounded by security, always drawing crowds. It outlived most of the cast, outlasted countless other television props, and became perhaps the most recognizable vehicle in sitcom history. And somewhere, you can imagine Fred Sanford smiling, knowing that his old truck, the one that barely ran most days, ended up being worth more than all the junk he ever hauled, combined. Number 1. Red Fox died. The way he lived, performing.
Esther's gonna be here. Elizabeth, I'm coming, honey. I know I'm coming.
October 11th, 1991. Red Fox was rehearsing for a new sitcom, The Royal Family, when he suddenly grabbed his chest and collapsed. Everyone thought it was a joke, another one of his famous fake heart attacks. The cast laughed. The crew waited for him to pop back up with a punchline. But this time, he didn't get up. It was real. Paramedics were called, but it was too late. Red Fox died on set, doing what he'd done his entire life. making people laugh. The tragedy was unbearable, but there was something almost poetic about it too. He'd spent decades faking heart attacks as Fred Sanford, clutching his chest and crying out for Elizabeth. And in the end, his heart gave out for real, in front of cameras, surrounded by a crew who loved him. He didn't retire quietly. He didn't fade away. He went out performing, exactly as he would have wanted. Red Fox lived loud, fought hard, and left a legacy that still echoes through comedy today. The Junkyard King never stopped hustling, right up until the very last second. The morning of October 11th started like any other rehearsal day. Fox arrived early, in good spirits, joking with the crew and running lines with his co-stars. The royal family was supposed to be his comeback, a return to network television after years in the wilderness. He was excited, energized, ready to prove he still had it. At 68 years old, he moved a little slower, his voice a little raspier, but the fire still burned bright. They were blocking a scene, working through movements and timing, when Fox suddenly stopped mid-sentence. He put his hand on his chest, staggered slightly, and dropped to one knee. The director called out, "Red, we're not filming yet." The cast chuckled, assuming he was improvising, getting into character early. But then he collapsed completely, flat on his back, not moving. The laughter died instantly. Someone screamed for help. A production assistant called 911, while a crew member rushed to Fox's side, checking for a pulse, for breathing, for any sign of life. They found none. Paramedics arrived within minutes, working frantically to revive him, but it was too late. Red Fox was pronounced dead at the hospital. Massive heart attack. The same fate he'd joked about for decades finally catching up to him. The irony was crushing. For 6 seasons, he'd clutched his chest and cried, "I'm coming, Elizabeth!" And audiences had laughed because they knew it was fake, just Fred Sanford being dramatic. But when it happened for real, when Red Fox actually had a heart attack, people thought it was another joke. The boy who cried wolf scenario, except the wolf was dead, and it had been lurking in the shadows all along. Bonus fact, a single prop sold for more than anyone expected.
Are you kidding? My grandfather used to tell me stories about the Revolutionary War. You know, how the soldiers fought then. Give me that rifle, let me show you.
After the show ended, most props were discarded, donated, or disappeared into storage. But one item survived and became legendary. Fred Sanford's battered armchair, the throne from which he judged the world, schemed his next con, and clutched his chest during fake heart attacks, eventually went to auction. Collectors expected modest interest, maybe a few $1,000s from nostalgic fans. Instead, bidding exploded. The chair sold for over $24,000, a staggering amount for a piece of furniture held together by duct tape and memories. But it wasn't just a chair. It was history, the seat where Red Fox created one of television's most unforgettable characters. Whoever bought it didn't just purchase a prop. They bought a piece of comedy immortality, proof that even in a junkyard, some things are priceless. Sanford and Son didn't follow the rules. It broke them, rebuilt them, and left them smoking in the junkyard. If you loved digging through these secrets, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment telling us which fact shocked you most. Because in a world of ordinary sitcoms, only one dared to turn trash into television gold.